Hello and welcome to an episode of Jacob's House of Rock. And today I'm going to be talking about my sort of initial thoughts about the brand new Tool album. Oh my god, guys, I know, right? I was as stoked about it as I'm sure all of you were. Now, let me go over a little brief history about me and Tool. So, I have not been one of the people who has been waiting 13 years for this album because I actually didn't really get into Tool or even that much music in general for as long ago as that, to be honest. Because I'm 23 now. 13 years ago, it would have been 10. I didn't really start getting into the more rock-oriented music or anything like that until a couple of years after that, when I sort of after about the first year or two of high school, that's when it really clicked for me, and then I just went hardcore into rock music, especially progressive rock. So yeah, I really started to get into Tool, during that time. And so in the time that I was actually actively listening to this kind of music, I never really got to experience what a new Tool album sounded like, because all of them had come out several years before I had gotten into the genre. So this was very exciting for me, and yeah, I mean, look, I just brought these out just to kind of show you guys I'm legit Tool fan here. I also got a couple of Perfect Circle albums somewhere amongst my CD collection and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, this is just sort of my basic thoughts about the new album, Fear Inoculum, and just kind of my thoughts and feelings on it after having listened to it a couple of times. I really actually wanted to do a reaction video and all that stuff, because that seems to be what all the hip youngsters are doing on the internets these days in terms of new music and that sort of stuff. But I couldn't resist just listening to the songs the moment I found them. And the way I did that, which I highly, highly recommend you do as well, is when you actually put on a new album, or you put on this album, whether you've actually listened to it yet or not, it's probably even more enjoyable if you haven't listened to it, because there's just something super special about listening to a Tool track for the very first time, which is something that a lot of us have not experienced in a very long time, which is why this is so exciting. But yeah, for you guys who are gonna do that, I highly recommend closing your eyes, maybe even being in a dark room, lying down, get some really good headphones, and just let the album play out, and just have the most sort of psychedelic, crazy experience. No drugs needed. So yeah, let's get into my thoughts about this album. So they dropped the track Fear Inoculum, like, I don't know how long it was, a week or two ago, and people have been having sort of mixed feelings about that track, because it was very, how would you put it? It was very, like, some people were either saying that this is like, that this sounds very sort of soft for Tool, and other people saying that this sounds too much like the old Tool albums, like almost piece by piece, if it was sort of put in there. And people were having very mixed reactions. Some people bloody loved it, some people were not that big a fan of it. I felt like I was kind of in the middle, but the more I listened to it, the more I really began to love that track. The just like, I'm a big fan of progressive rock, guys, and even though I'm a really big fan of the heavier sort of stuff, I still have a very wide sort of interest in music, so I was really able to sort of appreciate all the sort of the really sort of slower build-up and just the sonicscape that song put out, and it's very trancey, and it turns out the rest of the album is actually very similar to that. This whole album in general feels very different, yet so iconically Tool. Like, just the guitar, and especially that bass tone, is just like it's taken straight out of some of the earlier albums. However, the strange thing is, it does feel a little more laid back, which is very interesting, which is probably my biggest point of contention of this album, and I think that is with a lot of other people. One thing I really like about this album is it has very long songs. It doesn't have a lot of songs, but the ones it does have are long. The longest of which I think is over 15 minutes, almost 16 minutes long, and that's actually my favorite song, which I'll get to a bit later. But yeah, something to put out is, yeah, the songs are very long. They don't feel long, actually, because they have a lot going on in them, and they change quite a lot. So you get so many different rhythms and textures and various things going on. But like I said, something about this album feels a little bit, I don't know what word to say, because this isn't a soft album. Like you hear the drumming. The drumming is fantastic on this album. Just the percussion in general, actually, I bloody well love. But you hear like the guitar tone is thick and rich, and the bass is nice and aggressive sounding and pounding, and that drum tone is very aggressive. But when you combine all three, and just in the way the songs are sort of slower and they build more, it doesn't have that sort of raw aggression that we get on some of Tool's earlier albums, and actually all of their albums, to be frank here. Because, something like Vicarious on 20,000 Days is such a heavy song through and through. And I think aside from the last song being Tempest or Seven Tempest or whatever you want to call it, it's Tempest, but instead of a T, it starts with the number 7 as the T for some weird reason. That seems to be a theme on this album. I haven't explored this album thematically very in depth. I haven't really dissected it, the lyrics and all that sort of stuff as of yet. In fact, with a lot of Tool, it takes me a while to really do that. I just kind of let it sink in at its own pace, so it might be a while before I really touch on that stuff. But just musically, that song is definitely the heaviest song on this album. Now, that's not to say this album doesn't have heavier parts throughout it, but I think just the way that song opens, where it just kind of, the guitars just like a driving train in there, that riff, and then it kind of just builds into another one, and then we got Maynard or Mallard. Mallard, as a lot of people jokingly say, just being like, oh, here we go again, and then it just, it's so heavy and awesome. And that one's my favorite track on this album, just kind of putting it out there. But we do get a lot of other sort of heavier parts throughout it, but overall, this album has a lot more. Like I said, I don't know how to label it, because this is a very heavy album as far as typical music goes. But for a Tool album, it feels laid back and sort of smoother. But it does have a lot of stuff musically that's very interesting. The rhythms are very strong and dynamic, and the way this album's recorded is very clean and very pristine and very on point. It's very different, like I said, to the first couple of albums, which are a lot more raw sounding. But then we get something like, Lateralis and 20,000 Days, which are very clean as well. But this one, combined with that slight shift in style, is possibly the most sort of cleanest sounding one. And we do get some actual more clean guitar on this thing. Not quite, but we get some more sort of airy, groovy, clean sort of passages throughout this. And this album, the way I feel about it is, this is like Tool's sort of more trancey album. This is the kind of album that, like I said, you would listen to in the dark, alone, with headphones, and just off in your own little world. And it's just bloody brilliant for that. This is less the sort of album that you'd be headbanging to and just jumping around going crazy. And whether that's a good or a bad thing, I'd say that's up to you. Because personally, I'm kind of worried. I can sense that this album might get a lot of heat for that sort of musical decision, especially seeing as how a lot of people have been waiting a very long time for this album. This album is kind of like the musical equivalent of the video game Half-Life 3 being released, for any of you Half-Life fans out there. I've dabbled a little bit in that, but I'm not much of a gamer myself. But yeah, basically, this album's like that. So what more to say? Like, I'm actually pretty tempted to do a track-by-track analysis of this thing, and kind of just similar to what I did with the first Black Sabbath album. If you've been on my channel before, I did a pretty long video where I listened to each track of Black Sabbath's debut album, and then just talk about it like I am now, but just right after listening to it, and giving you really in-depth thoughts about that, and then going over the album as a whole. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments below, because life's been a bit hectic recently, so I would need to know if people would be interested in that before devoting time to it, because that does take quite a long time to make and edit and record and listen to the album itself. What more to say about this? I'm still taking it in, as you guys can kind of tell. Like, The album only came out like the other day, and I've listened to each track probably at least twice, I'd say. I've listened to Tempest like 5 or 6 times now, because like I said, that's my favorite track. I've listened to Fear Inoculum like, oh, it's dozens of times since it's been released. It's like this album that I just get drawn to kind of re-listen to, and it's really like a rabbit hole when you go down this album. Um, at this point, I'd probably say it's not my favorite Tool album, and I don't know if it was sort of worth the 13 years. However, I'm really scared saying that because I don't want to discourage people from listening to this album because it's so well recorded and so well done in a way. Some stuff that I really loved on here would be, like I said, the percussion, the drumming was amazing, and I love how thrown in there just little drum fills, and especially this kind of weird bell sound. It's got really sort of spiritual, trancy kind of themes and feelings in the music, this album, which is very Tool in itself. Um, and yeah, it's just, I heard that this album was made in like a way that it was intended to be one long song in a way, so perhaps if you guys kind of listen to it as that, it might take on a whole nother meaning. I probably listened to the tracks out of order because they came up on just on YouTube, so I just kind of went randomly through the tracks at whatever one came up first, just listening to them, and I had a great time actually listening to this. What can I say? I'm rambling, guys. Oh. A big issue, or not even an issue, is just something that people have been pointing out is Maynard's vocal delivery is very different on this album. It does lend itself more to some of his more smoother, people have been saying angelic vocal lines, something similar to what he would sound like on A Perfect Circle and all that sort of stuff like that. Going into this album, I was actually kind of worried because, you know, big expectations for this album, obviously, and the last Perfect Circle album, I probably didn't give it a fair enough chance. I didn't listen to it properly, but from what I heard, it was a bit bleh compared to some of A Perfect Circle's other stuff, especially songs like Judith, which is just so good. So that one was I was a little bit worried that there would be more of that kind of stuff coming in, and there's a little bit, because like I said, it's a smoother sort of album. However, this is still Tool. Like I said, sound-wise, it's so uncanny. The sound of the particular guitar tone, the drumming style, the various, you know, time signature changes, all the riffs thrown in there, and just especially that bass that I forgot his name, the bass player name, but love that guy's playing. And, you know, Maynard's voice, because aside from, again, Tempest is the most sort of, I feel like that song would fit perfectly on something like Lateralis or 20,000 Days here, or is it 10,000? Sorry, I've been saying 20,000 Days. 10,000 Days, Jesus, you people are going to freak out in the comments, I bet. But no matter, I'm a grown man, I can deal with it. Yeah, so I feel like that song, if you're kind of after that sort of Tool, that song would lend itself really strongly to the similar sounds on these two albums, and that's probably why I'm drawn to it the most, because it's really got Tool up on turned up to 11, and the guitar soloing in that and the riffs and the grooves in that song are phenomenal, and like I said, Maynard is going full force, especially in that like opening lines to that song, and it really is where the album peaks in my eyes. And then we go to some of the other songs that are just, this album has really, really beautiful trancey moments on it, and it just really sinks you in. So like I said, there's a song called Descending and Invincible, and the title track, and some I forgot all the names of the tracks. There's a couple of other ones, but you know, it's got like a handful of these main songs, but then in between them, it's got a couple of little shorter songs that are more just like weird soundbite intervals, which isn't really new to Tool, but like I'm not too fond of them, except for Chocolate Trip, which is basically just a really, really knockout drum solo with like some weird electronic sounds going on, and that one's really enjoyable too. Like, this whole album just got this really strange feel to it, and what I'm really happy about is just the hype that this type of music is getting, because, you know, anyone who's been on my channel before knows I am in no way, shape, or form a fan of the sort of polluted modern pop music scene that we have these days. There's just basic bitch kind of trash that slithers out of our radio speakers these days. Oh my god. And to see an album like this, which is just full on prog, getting so much love and attention, it just really gets me in the feels, guys. Um, so I'm really sorry this video has just been a kind of like a spew of like a ramble of my thoughts about this album. Like I said, I need to dissect this more. I need to sit with it a little longer because I've only had a couple of listens to this thing, but like I said, I have like some things that I'm feeling about it. I'm like, it's a little softer. I like the heavier stuff, but damn, when I actually get down and listen to it, it's so good. So, I I don't know, guys. I need to listen to it more. But if you are interested in a more cohesive, a little less sporadic, weird sort of a video about this album. And, you know, I know I'm not the only one talking about this thing, which again, I'm really happy about it, but at the same time, it might be an oversaturation of just random people's opinions on this thing, so I understand if you don't really need that. But if you are interested, then I would be more than happy to do a track-by-track review and my thoughts on this album, just like I did with that Sabbath one. Or if you want me to do that on any album in particular, actually, because that was quite fun to do. And I love listening to music, so it's just a win-win for me, really. And for you guys, hopefully. What else to touch on? I haven't got the CD in CD form yet. I really, really, really want to get it. But it's expensive. It's very expensive because they did Tool have this thing where they do like weird album covers. Like, look at this. 10,000 Days, not 20, has this cool sort of 3D imagery kind of stuff that you have these weird lenses and you can look at these two pictures, like you see here, they're slightly different, taken from slight sides, and you get like a 3D perspective kind of thing, and it actually works pretty well and it's bloody awesome. So that's a really cool thing on this album. Lateralis has like this clear plastic sleeve with this beautiful art. Another the thing that I think is a little bit sad about Fear Inoculum is the album cover. It fits Tool really well, I think. It fits this album, but I miss this guy's art. I forgot the artist's name, but he's the guy who, of course, did 10,000 Days and Lateralis, and he, you know, did some stuff with Tool in the music videos, and this imagery just fits Tool so perfectly. I wish they would have, you know, stuck with this, but it's been 13 years. I understand if they want to do something different, but just that kind of weird spiral shape is like, I don't know, it's okay. I guess it kind of fits with some of the older album kind of stuff. Like, what the hell is this? I don't know what this is. It's just a weird shape, so it kind of fits in with that kind of an art style. But I would have loved to seen something new from this guy. I don't know if he's still doing stuff, but if he is, please collab with Tool again. You guys just, oh, you fit so well together. I'm also really interested to see if we'll get some music videos done by the guitarist, because he worked in the practical effects industry with some, you know, various films and stuff like that, and he does a lot of the stop motion, those really freaky, awesome stop motion videos that Tool are known for, and oh man, I want to see what he comes up with next. I hope he does more of that really trippy, creepy stop motion stuff and just some surreal, dark shit as he's used to doing, because that is always so much fun. And I'm just, yeah, I'm on the hype train with this album, guys, and I hope you are. I'm actually just really keen to hear what you think of this thing. Like I said, people have been having really mixed opinions on this album, and I can see why. However, when it really comes down to it, it is good, solid music, recorded well, performed really well. It takes you places. I think the best way to go about this is just turn off your expectations, turn off everything you know or you think you know about Tool, close your eyes, put on some headphones. Pretty good headphones are required for this album, guys. Like, just spend like some overwhelmingly large sum of money on decent headphones if you don't already have them. They're really worth it for listening to this thing, guys. I don't know. Yeah, again, I'm just rambling. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry I haven't been putting out content quite as frequently on this channel again. I actually am working in a new place now, so life has been really, really hectic, so I don't know how often I'm able to get to doing these videos, but I will try to upload every once in a while. The channel's still alive and well. I'm just kind of busy for a lot of the time, so if you're wondering why it's been a bit slow, that's why. And yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Keep on rocking, people. Let me know what you think of the album, and let me know what other sort of videos you'd like to see from me and all that good stuff. And yeah, peace out, guys. Bye.